Try this again. Okay. I don't know why everything got reset to default, but okay. And I have a crap ton of delay. But I can fix that. Okay, let's do this, and we're good. Alright, testing 1, 2, folks. Let's try that again. Is everybody alright? Can everybody hear me? That was so weird. At no point do I remember putting my setup to default. Awesome. No delay. Everything's good. All right. I think we're all set to go here. Just gonna go ahead and okay, there we go. Now even okay, so it was a weird thing going on with my computer earlier because this is part of what we're going to be talking about today, obviously. Pretty big deal whenever there's a moderate risk that has 100-mile-per-hour winds possible tagged in that as well. But yeah, if you can look at the weather pattern here, you can see that yeah, it's kind of busy. That's just putting it lightly. But yeah, there was a weird thing going on where the Sunday moderate risk wasn't showing up either, which was kind of weird. Maybe that was part of the problem. I don't know. But in any case, we're all set to go here. Hope everybody's doing well. Don't forget to hit that like button if you haven't already. And hit that share button if you haven't either. Because it's going to be a long week from the looks of things. Like as you can see, next 5 days we have slight risk for literally every day this week. So we're going to get into the details with that. And then of course later this evening we're going to live stream as well. So hopefully you guys will be able to join me a little bit later. But in any case, we're just going to kind of take a look at what our hazards are. So here is today's threat, by the way, folks. This is the moderate risk. This is a level 4 of 5, as you can see in the legend here. It's a pretty big deal whenever you see a moderate risk. And I know what some people are thinking. We've had it a lot this year. Probably a moderate risk for tornadoes. Actually, it's not. There is a chance for tornadoes, but the tornado threat, I'm actually expecting it to be kind of subdued today for a couple of different reasons. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the moderate risk is actually for the damaging wind threat. Like, it's pretty significant wind threat at that. So, like I said, a lot to kind of unpack there. And then we also have a pretty significant hail threat area. Oh, that's interesting. And just so you know, this is live and this is happening real time. They actually have now made an upgrade to where this is now a 45% area. So this is now a moderate risk that's driven by hail as well, whereas before it was only a 30. A 30% risk would be an enhanced risk basically. But now we've gone up to a moderate risk on the hail threat too. So pretty large hail expected too. Of course, that's anticipated whenever you have this little black dashed line area, the hatched risk as we call it. So no real surprises there. So we're gonna go ahead and go over that first. If anyone on here is a YouTube member and you already saw me kind of go into the details with this yesterday and as to why this is a wind threat, feel free to skip it if you want. But if not, pay extra close attention to this today because I'm actually going to use a couple of different models here. I'm going to go with the GFS and I'm going to kind of go with the HRRR here. Not going to do too much in the way of comparison here because models are in pretty good agreement with this. Have been for a little while. But we're just going to take a quick look first at what today's setup's like, and then we're going to kind of get into the pattern heading down the line here. So, actually this run is still loading, so we're going to go back an hour. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at where our trough is actually. You can see it right here. It's actually in a little bit of an odd spot, but like I said, we're looking at a couple of different models here. We're going to go sneak over to one more. Going to go look at the wrap here, and there's a couple of different things to make note of. Small little jet streak right here, and this is going to be a key factor to this setup here. Jet streak is an area where you have winds that are above 100 knots in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is that area that we're talking about right here in the yellow. It's interesting because the main trough, which is going to be the catalyst for today's setup, is all the way back towards the northwest. But if we move this forward a couple hours, watch what happens here. I always have trouble working with College of DuPage's weather maps, but kind of got it down now. But in any case, here you can see, look what happens as we get later into the afternoon. Look at how this jet streak really kind of ramps up as we get later into the evening. And this will be right around the time of storm initiation. On that southern flank is where we have that jet streak coming into play. So kinematically, we have a pretty solid setup in the upper levels. And then if we go over to the HRRR, subsidiary model of the RAP here, you can pretty much see the same thing going on here. Of course, we're looking at a different level of the atmosphere. Winds aren't quite as strong. But over here, interestingly enough, even though we're looking at, truthfully, what would be the wrong level of the atmosphere, we even see the short wave. So we've already checked the boxes on two different parameters that we're looking for. We got wind shear, and we have a lifting mechanism. Our short wave right here, that's our lifting mechanism. And it's becomes most evident right around and just after sunset here. So this is when I think we would see the strongest winds, hence why I said between the 7 to 10 p.m. time frame central time on the thumbnail would be when I would expect the most severe weather. There is a chance actually that this setup could hold out even longer than that. I'm kind of just waiting to see how things pan out with it. But obviously, if it goes longer than a certain time, obviously I'm not going to be able to do the full stream on that. I'll do the best that I can, though, of course. As we continue to go on here, though, we're going to actually go ahead and take a look at that 700 region. One thing that will come to note is there's decent directional shear with this setup here. Like, the threat for tornadoes isn't high, not because of a lack of kinematics. I'll put it that way. Like, you can see right around that peak time that I was talking about earlier, you can see those wind barbs kind of pushing almost in that north to south or southwest to northeast direction at 700 here. And even if you look at low-level jet, along with the short waves that we're seeing here, you'll see that north to south flow. So probably some of you are probably thinking, okay, well, if you've been around long enough, you said every time you see north to south flow, it's usually a big red flag. In a normal case, it would be. I mean, we have the dew points and everything else to go along with that. But the thing is, within that area right here, the key is actually going to be the surface temperatures. So what you want in a typical situation when it comes to tornadoes is you don't want a wide gradient between the temperature and the dew point. When you get your surface temperatures into the upper 90s or mid 90s like we're seeing here, and you put that up against a dew point of 55 like this, what ends up happening is the storms have the potential to go outflow dominant. That's what you don't want when it comes to tornado genesis. You need those storms to be feeding on warm, moist air. With outflow, you get cool, dry air that rushes out from the storm. You need the storm to be taking in that warm, moist air. So this is a environment that becomes very favorable for downburst at that point. And like I said, and the proof's pretty much right here. You look at the downdraft cape here. It's at 1,613. To put in perspective for you, 600 and 700 is usually a good threshold number for damaging wind potential. Usually that's a red flag. And once you get above 1,000, you're usually getting into hatch territory at that point. Really 800 you could. But when you get to about 1,400, it's getting pretty dangerous. So I would say we can expect some pretty strong storms and some very strong downbursts, some very strong damaging winds as we go into the evening hours towards this region here. I do expect these storms to be quick movers, given the environment that they're in, especially with that jet streak coming into play. So these storms, once they get started, they're going to be rolling here. But this storm is probably going to cover a lot of ground and end up being what's called a derecho. There are specific requirements for that. You're good, Isaiah. I appreciate you joining in, man. It's just a short little discussion. Nothing too crazy. Appreciate you popping in, though, regardless, man. So I hope you popped in at the part where we were talking about why there's not going to be a major tornado threat with this, although a few could still occur. And I was kind of learning about this a little bit earlier, but it's a better look. But this is a kind of a better idea. Okay, good. But here you go, Isaiah. They're probably still adjusting the update, Siwi, because to be honest, it was kind of glitching on my computer a bit. Like the moderate risk had randomly disappeared for a minute, and then in the synopsis, I couldn't even see it for a little bit as the update was occurring. So might be a couple of errors here and there, but I do think that a derecho is still likely at this point. But what I was saying though was, Isaiah, is the reason why we're not expected to see a major tornado setup with this is partially going to be because of this wide gap between the dew point and the temperature here. There's going to be a lot of dry air aloft towards the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere. And the reason why that is partially due to this gap here between the temperature. You got 92 degrees surface temperature up against 53-degree dew points. And the corresponding downdraft cape or decape as a result, look at that. 1676. We're getting towards Revolutionary War numbers here, boys. All jokes aside, though, that's pretty dangerous, actually. But in any case here, hey, remember, you could still get severe weather with 50 to 55-degree dew points. But like I said, it's just a little dry when it comes to the tornado setup. You want that warm, moist air flowing into the storm, obviously. This setup kind of leans into a lot of outflow. It's just, yeah, this setup kind of leans into more outflow. So when you see this, tend to think, okay, outflow. But yeah, that's the main reason why. Hey, Grace. Welcome back. Glad to have you back. Yeah, let's hope not. I was kind of bummed I missed that stream. I'm not going to lie. What does Tuesday look like for Minnesota? Tuesday for Minnesota, we'll get into that in just a second here. There's one other thing I'm going to show before we start to get into the whole week, because we're going to be talking about a lot of different areas. But Minnesota, like southern Minnesota, could be under the gun. Towards northern and central, I'm still kind of questioning it. I'm going to show really quickly why there was another dead giveaway, and I don't know if you might have seen it last night, Isaiah, when I did the membership video. But when I looked at this was kind of my giveaway as well. This was in that sector where the storms were anticipated to initiate, and I saw this little area of cool, dry air here out ahead of it. I was thinking, if that's not outflow, I don't know what is. And then watch how perfectly that matches up with what the simulated radar looks like. Boop. Pretty much in the same spot right at OOZ. Warm air is behind it. Cool, dry air out ahead of it. There you go. But in any case, though, let's go to the next day. Monday's not quite as potent as what I was once worried about. Tuesday seems to be taking over as the day on that. Still have a broad 2% tornado threat, 15% wind, 15% hail. May stream Monday, may not. We'll see what happens with that. We'll get into that in a little bit. Tuesday I'm interested in. There's a chance that it could go up to a 5, but we'll look at that in just a minute. I haven't looked as much at Monday because I've been paying a lot of attention to Tuesday. Grace, here's Minnesota involved with Tuesday here. It's mainly going to stay mostly towards southern and southeastern Minnesota. A little further off towards the west, you might get a little bit of action, but unless you're within the slight risk or the enhanced risk, I wouldn't be super concerned about it. Just pay attention. It's been kind of a wily year. I've been hearing a lot of talk about this setup being more of a wind threat than a tornado threat, but I think we could get a little smorgasbord of all three hazards. I do think that hail will be a problem. I do think tornadoes are possible, and I do think damaging winds will probably end up being the main threat. I mean, it's not surprising considering that we are getting closer and closer to summertime. Minnetonka, Minnesota. I think I know where that is. Is it further? Isn't that further up to the north? Like, isn't it north of Minneapolis? Or is it south? It's kind of by Minneapolis. So you're close to it. You're close to the action. Yeah, you're close. You're gonna be close to the action. You're gonna be in the slight risk at the very least right now. Of course, as we all know, this tends to change pretty quickly. But on days 4 through 8, we have day 4 and a day 5 slight risk. I do think that we're going to get remnants left over from the day 3 threat, which is going to go into the Ohio Valley. I do think that that's mainly going to comprise of a damaging wind threat also. And then the following day, we're looking back over towards the Arklatex and also including Oklahoma as well. Little bit of questions in regards to that setup here. I haven't had too many opportunities to look at that one. I wasn't trying to say anything, Isaiah, but yeah, that was a bit sus, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you. Then on days 6, 7, and 8, predictability is currently too low. All right, so now we're going to go to the GFS, get that all set up. Yeah, that day, Tuesday, does kind of look like we could get a little bit of everything. It might be a smorgasbord. But this is also why we're taking a look at that, because the model's been kind of going back and forth with it. At one point, Monday was supposed to be a bigger day, but now that's kind of gone towards Tuesday. It's kind of the weird thing about doing, well, not even a weird thing. It's kind of one of the finicky things when it comes to the whole weather forecasting thing, because things can literally change just a little bit. The progression of the trough can make a world of difference. Speeds up, slows down, changes the time frame, and timing's everything when it comes to severe weather. Oh, and I did not want to click the sounding. Hey, look, I found a frozen sound. I must have clicked up in the mountains or something. But in any case, though, let's get the ball rolling here. So this is, again, a look at today's setup from the GFS's perspective. You can see the shortwave here clearly. I'm still kind of interested in that Kansas-Oklahoma line in regards to the tornado setup, but that's really going to be dependent on the type of convective mode that we end up getting. You saw with the HRRR a little bit earlier, and I'll show it again one more time, but I don't really see discrete cells popping up here, or at least they're not being picked up on from HRRR. And HRRR is usually really good with that. Actually, hang on a second. In this run, it looks like there is something that does kind of pop up over here. If this storm can somehow keep its inflow and not go outflow dominant, there could be a shot at a stronger tornado here. There could be an increased tornado threat here. Like I said, it's extremely conditional, kind of hard to pinpoint when or even if it could happen, but definitely need to be watching the Kansas-Oklahoma line tonight. But in any case, though, we'll watch this storm system roll out here. This trough here, which has been our main suspect here, is going to deepen as we get into Monday. This is going to help increase that severe weather threat just a little bit for tomorrow. And then it's really not going to be until Tuesday where we get a more stout look at our setup. This is going to be on early Tuesday afternoon from the looks of it. But it looks like the main threat's going to be more so towards the Midwest. For your area on Tuesday, Grace, it does look like I think the threat would be towards the early to mid-afternoon. Could get a storm motion that would be coming from the southwest to northeast, maybe shifting a little bit north possibly. You graduate tomorrow. Well, congratulations, man. Congratulations. My little boy's becoming a man. But all jokes aside, good job, man. You made it. Oh. Well, in either case, though, congratulations. You made it. Middle school was rough for me growing up. So, it was quite an accomplishment that I survived that. Anyway, enough about my personal life. But if you're still here, Grace, though, it looks like early afternoon, mid-afternoon will be your threat, and things would probably start to tamper down as we get towards sunset and beyond that point as of right now. At least that's what GFS is showing. Areas further off to the east towards areas like Wisconsin, I think the threat actually would start to ramp up maybe just a little bit as we get towards sunset. Then maybe over towards Illinois, maybe eastern Missouri over towards St. Louis. That's when I would expect things to really kind of ramp up a bit too. I do think the threat persists overnight as well. We do see an isolated threat as we get into Wednesday afternoon, into the evening. This could even include your area, actually, Isaiah, as we get into the twilight hours of the afternoon. And then after that, there's our next setup to come right behind that. Could be a couple of different points of interest with this setup. I think that we'll still see the Arklatex, the Oklahoma Arklatex, I guess you would call it, involved as well. I mean, you could see the diffluence in your area. You know what I'm talking about. There's that diffluence right there. I think it's going to be a line of storms, just kind of like what we were seeing. And you are in the slight risk, in all fairness, like right on the edge of it if you aren't. So that kind of makes sense. Then, as we go into Thursday, here's a couple of different areas here. Could watch over towards South Dakota, Nebraska, maybe. I do think that's questionable right now. We'll have to see how that pans out. Here's a short wave over towards Oklahoma and Texas, moving into Arkansas and Louisiana, of course. And that's really just the start of the pattern. Watch what happens as we go further along here. Another stout setup. This is going to be this is going to be next week on Saturday. Then another storm system on Sunday towards the southern plains again. This elongated trough here. We have another one coming in right after that, right towards the end of the month. And then we, of course, as we get into June, we get another setup coming into play here. This kind of has the look like it might shift more so towards the eastern half of the U.S., towards the Midwest, maybe even the Ohio, Tennessee valleys, maybe even the Southeast. Of course, we're looking 16 days in advance, where everything could change literally within the blink of an eye. So take the tail end of what you were seeing here with a grain of salt. The very tail end, I should say. Okay, let's get into the different levels of the atmosphere, looking at 700. Come on. Obviously, we already talked about today's setup, so I'm not going to go over it again. The Monday setup, I do see short waves, but the timing looks like it might be just a tad bit off currently. The area seems like the area where we have the stronger short wave seems to be a little bit off to the west still. So like I said, I do have some questions and uncertainties with Monday's setup, but I do think potential is still very much there. Now when we get towards Tuesday, different story. Very clear indicators of short waves by the time we get into the early afternoon here. Again, I'm thinking towards Minnesota, early mid-afternoon, towards Minneapolis, then towards Kansas City. I actually think it will be actually more towards the morning. We get towards eastern Iowa, I think would be mid-afternoon, maybe even later into the evening, more so towards maybe St. Louis, and then starting to even get into Chicago by overnight. After that, it does look like we see a little bit of a weakening trend until mid-Wednesday afternoon. Very strong short wave here, so a little bit of a resurgence of that line as we head into Wednesday afternoon. This is your area, Isaiah. I would say right before sunset is when you would probably have the peak risk here. Strongest storms could be a little further to the north for you, though. Then here's that Thursday setup. A couple of different areas of interest. Short waves actually look pretty good for Thursday, so I'm interested in that. As we get into Friday here, Friday's not looking all that impressive, but of course, like I said before, further out we look, the more we have to just keep monitoring for trends. So Saturday, we're starting to get a little bit more impressive here. I mentioned that before. And then Sunday, Monday, not impressive at the moment. Then here's the rest of our pattern here. Do see some inklings of more impressive setups to come, as I mentioned before. A couple different levels of the atmosphere. So low-level jet, I'm really interested in particular as to what Tuesday looks like. We already know what today is going to be like. Actually, pretty solid kinematics. It's just really the thermo profile isn't ideal for tornadoes tonight. So we go into Monday. We do have a decent kinematic setup here. Like I said, low-level jet isn't very impressive, so I think it's going to help keep that threat a bit more tame. As we get into Tuesday, however, look at that flow that we got here. That I do find suspicious. Yep, I woke up early this morning and I said, well, might as well do it. Yeah, I'm happy. I can't wait to see those emojis. I'm really happy that we got those. Happy we got that to work. So it looks like at 18. Yep. 18 to 21 will be Minneapolis. Des Moines probably would be at a similar time. I think the heightened time for St. Louis might be just before sunset. See that increased threat over here towards, actually I would say it's a little south of Chicago here. I do think this evolves into a wind threat as we get later into the evening, and then here's the setup for Wednesday. A little sneaky area, low-level jet on the southern edge here. I would be kind of interested in watching too for Thursday. Here's Thursday setup. I kind of like how Thursday's looking in the low-level jet. If you were looking for tornadoes, that might be possible, especially with the northern mode. I do think a northern mode is going to end up being issued with that. just not a lot of confidence in the models yet from the looks of it, but new models are also loading as we speak, so I'm kind of limited as to what I can look at. So go beyond that point. It can take a toll. I'm not going to lie and say it won't. 5 moderates, one high. More to go. I mean, it's part of the game, man. Some years are like that, man. Some years really are like that. And this year's just been one of them. Like I remember the first year I started streaming last year, we had plenty of moderate risk as well. We even had the high risk. We had 331. So, yeah. 2024 has been that. Goes without saying, but we anticipated it. I mean, you're on Discord. We talked about it early on in the year. We knew the shift from El Nino to neutral Enzo all the way to La Nina was going to have a chance at spelling trouble, and it's verified. I mean, we were looking at the analogs. We knew what it was. We were spot on with it. Not trying to brag, but we always knew there was an opportunity. When you have that kind of shift being that rapid, that abrupt, usually you have a little trouble that'll follow with that. See a couple interesting systems here. So 27 looks moderately interesting. And then, of course, we'll look towards the end of the month and beyond. I think the 31st into the 1st is going to have to be watched really close. We'll just kind of go on from that point. In any case, though, let's go ahead and look at our dew points here. With it being summertime, I don't really see too much point in looking at the surface temps, so we'll kind of just go from there. But we're just simply put, when you're looking at dew points, you're looking for severe weather. The more blue that you see towards an area of interest that I mentioned earlier, and I'll kind of pause it as I go from that point, the greater the chance of severe we're going to see. Oh, didn't want to do it that fast, though. So here's Monday. Here's Tuesday. Let me go back a couple frames. Yep. And that kind of says all that it needs to right there. Minnesota getting into the 60s. Des Moines getting into the 70s. To get later into the evening. Looks like Chi-Town gets close to those mid-60s into the 70s here. And this has pretty much been a big part of the problem all year. We've just constantly had Gulf of Mexico moisture just being pumped in nonstop. Nothing's really inhibited the Gulf of Mexico moisture at all. So literally we could have a whole day of thunderstorms, significant storms at that, and then all the moisture that's used to help create those storms gets rushed right back in as if nothing happened. Atmosphere recharges, and we have day after day after day of severe weather. Also, the potential for flooding as well. Flooding has been a big problem this year, and I unfortunately anticipate that continuing, especially with the way this moisture flow has been progressing. Is pretty much forecast to continue progressing. Hate to be the bearer of bad news there, but I'm going to tell you how it is. You may like it, you may not like it. I'm sorry. Just got to tell you how it is. Can't control it, I can only tell you. Look at how soupy this environment is here. This is Wednesday, like I was talking about earlier, where we're expecting that line of storms. You can actually even see a little bit of the gradient here form. You can see the boundary here where the storms are likely to form, which is pretty cool to see. But obviously, we need to be on guard for the threat of damaging winds. Some large hail will probably still be possible, and maybe a couple of spin-ups can't be ruled out here still. Like I said, 81 hours out is a long way to go. So we'll have to see how things trend with that as we go into Wednesday here. But that's 4 days out that we're looking at. or just about 4 days out that we're looking at here. Well, 3.5 days actually. Yes, I can do math. I'm just kind of fumbling a little bit. In any case, though, here's that Thursday setup. Moisture return pretty similar here. No real surprises there. We'll go on from that point. I do think that at some point, though, we are going to get some more setups that are going to favor towards the Ozarks region, and even heading over towards the southeast maybe. So we get towards the end of this model run line here. So June could get pretty busy too here. It's not uncommon. June is I would say like maybe the third or fourth most active month when it comes to severe weather. And well, last June actually was really busy, but that was for a number of reasons that I'm not sure everybody wants to go into. But still, fact of the matter is, don't sleep on June either. No, April and May are always considered the big months, but don't sleep on June, as we have all found out. There's a good chance that some of you that have been watching or are still subscribed to the channel might have first heard of the channel last year in June. Speaking of which, hurricane season's coming too, so make sure you're ready for that. Okay. So, different parameter that we're looking at here. This is the precipitable water. I mean, if you want to know what precipitable water is, I mean, it's pretty much in the parameter name right there, precipitable water. This is the moisture available in the atmosphere that's, well, most likely inclined to fall. So, in simplest terms. So, basically, with severe weather, anything above an inch, there's a good chance you'll get severe weather. If you already have the other parameters in place, of course. Once you get to 1.5, you can expect torrential downpours if you get storms to pop up over that area. So, watch what happens as we go through down the line here. Of course, line of storms tonight. Expect some torrential downpours. Thankfully, the storms will be moving pretty fast, so it's not going to be a long-lasting event. But still could cause some problems here, especially with as much rain as we've gotten. So we go into Monday. For the most part, pretty much a similar deal here. So go on to Tuesday and to Wednesday. This is where we get kind of concerned about the threat of flooding. Definitely over towards Wisconsin, it could be pretty high. Southern Texas could be pretty high. And we go into the following day. Look at that. Precipitable water index of 2. This is over towards Arkansas. This is over towards eastern Oklahoma and over towards Red River region between the Oklahoma-Texas line. Definitely going to be watching this area in particular for the threat of flash flooding on Wednesday, regardless of whether I'm able to stream or not. Then even towards Dallas, we have to watch that too. And then in the days to come, just like I said, a big part of this is just that Gulf of Mexico moisture flow just being uninhibited completely as we continue to go forward. Just look at how much moisture we're still able to get. It is crazy. So even if you aren't in an area of severe weather, if you have showers and storms, especially if you're further to the south here, just be on the lookout for a potential torrential downpour here and there. And keep an eye on your rivers here and there as well. If you have multiple storms going over the same area over and over, that could become problematic down the line. And the threat of flash flooding will start to increase as we go forward. So just making sure you stay on top of your game here. So pretty much anyone that's in the southeast, Tennessee Valley, maybe even the southern parts of the Ohio Valley, need to be on the lookout for maybe some increased flooding threats as we go further down the line here. So, guess now we've looked at that. Let's go ahead and take a look at what our instability could be like. We might take a look at a couple of soundings, and we'll wrap this one up, and then we'll be ready to do a live stream a little bit later this evening So of course here's today's setup here. We did already kind of take a look at sounding over here earlier. We'll do it one more time though. So, interesting thing to make note of as we go on forward here. If I compare this to the HRRR sounding towards this region, the things to make note of here is that further towards the south, again towards southern Kansas, over towards the Kansas-Oklahoma line, is where I think the threat for a discrete storm, if a discrete storm pops up over this area, we have a threat for maybe a tornado or two, maybe even a strong one. The problem is, again, and while this is a little bit better, that spread between the dew point and the temperature, big problem. You kind of want the two a little bit closer together. Might be a little bit too much dry air to help this along here. And what will end up happening is, instead of getting that warm, moist air that we would need, we would end up having these storms becoming outflow dominant pretty quickly, and the damaging wind threat will go up instead. This is why we have that moderate risk again for tonight. And that's mainly going to be for damaging winds. You could literally get a mixture of discrete cells that could produce damaging winds along with the main line that we're anticipating to form tonight. So as we go forward, let's go to the following day. Still have a good bit of instability available here. I'm actually going to switch this really quickly over to hodiograph so that we can kind of knock out two birds with one stone here, be more efficient. Not trying to tie up too much more of you guys' time. Appreciate you even giving me your time to begin with. So that being said, let's go ahead and keep it rolling here. And just from looking at tomorrow's setup, I mean, there's a chance that we could get some good action here, especially over towards East Kansas, but I'm really thinking that we aren't going to see anything magnanimous. The shear profile further off to the east is just not that impressive towards East Kansas. Not impossible to get a tornado, but not quite as impressive as what we've seen in recent times. But I want you to notice something. This is what we were talking about literally just a couple minutes ago. Dew point to the temperature here. 71 degree dew point, 77 degree air temperature. This is more ideal for tornadoes than what we were seeing with that last sounding, where we had the temperature at 88 and the dew point at 60 something, in the mid 60s. So this storm if the storm was to go over this environment, this would have a much better chance of getting that inflow that you would need to help the storm grow, help it rotate, and produce. Not to say that it couldn't happen today, but it would have a better chance of happening tomorrow over towards this region in East Kansas. Excuse me. But in any case, though, and I've messed up again. Let's go ahead and fast forward Tuesday. So if we go into Tuesday, I would say the environment probably would be best around Des Moines right now from the looks of it. Even so, I think that low-level jet is going to be lacking just a little bit too far behind to really help aid this threat. I do think this is going to be, again, a damaging wind-dominant day. This kind of just has that look, especially as we get later into the evening. A lot of instability available, though, so we could get multiple modes here. I do also think hail will be a big thing early. This has the look of a hail sounding, looking at this QT here. And maybe a high precipitation supercell to go along with it. There is actually pretty good low-level shear with this, though. So, could have some early afternoon tornadoes and maybe some follow-up to go into the later part of the afternoon here. Timing is going to be everything with that setup here. But like I said, low-level profile is not incredible. I'll put it that way. As we get later into the evening, start to lose that instability rather quick. And of course, with that, the threat starts to subside. Do have to watch over towards Oklahoma maybe for some increased activity. But even so, not gonna be too concerned about that at the moment. we'll kind of get more in depth with the overnight hours a bit more as we get closer to that day. By the way, just in case anyone missed it, Tuesday is up to an enhanced risk still, just so you know. Okay, so here's Wednesday. This is going to be over towards the Ohio Valley. And not really surprising to see the marginal tornado threat. Low-level winds are not that impressive. Huh? Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you just said there. I'm sorry. In any case, though, tornado threat is not going to be that impressive on Wednesday, it looks like, mainly due to the fact that we just don't have a lot of shear available. It does look like towards the back half of the evening, maybe something could get going, but I'm really kind of on the fence about it. And then towards the mid-levels is another issue. I really think this, again, kind of favors more damaging winds than anything else. And even then, that's somewhat questionable at this current point in time. Like I said, even though the hazard type shows tornado, if I look at the shear profile, not that strong. We're just a little bit under the threshold here. We want to see that surface to 1 at about 20. We're at 15. So it's like we're on the fringe of it. It could be something, but it's not quite there just yet. It's just part of the game right now. So I'll have to see how this trends. If it uptrends, we might have more of a tornado threat. Kind of leaning against it at the moment, but we know how the weather can be. And then as we continue to go forward from there, here's that Thursday setup I'm kind of interested in. I haven't really seen anything yet that really piques my interest. I do kind of want to see what this spot looks like, and then we'll kind of go from there. But even so, I'm kind of seeing the same trend like we did with the previous day on Wednesday. Low-level shear's kind of lacking a little bit around the timing in which that low-level jet strength would be needed to strengthen and help the tornado threat here. Of course, like I said before, this is still variable considering we're 100 plus hours out. So I have to see how things trend from that point as well. So we'll go ahead and move on to the following day here. I'm actually a little bit more interested in Friday with this look over here towards the Red River region. I'm gonna click that really quickly. Shear's still weak, but like I said, with this time frame here, 132 hours, time for it to there is time for it to uptrend. There are a couple things that I do like with this setup. For example, I like the lift index. I like the gradient between the temperature and the surface temp and the dew points. So the shear uptrends could be a big deal. Still potential for really strong downdrafts with this as well, and large hail. But this threat has a much better, I think right now, has a better chance of producing tornadoes than some of the threats tonight. But we'll have to see how it pans out from that point. So after that, we're just kind of exploring at this point now, just kind of waiting to see what lies ahead here down the line. Obviously, with us being this far out, we're not going to read too heavily into it. Not really surprised to see that. The dew point to temperature gradient, not that impressive. So this is getting towards the end of the month. Do see a current, as it stands now, a current downtrend with this. The second, this interesting little setup there. Nothing I really am excited about just yet with that. But of course, like I said before, we have to see how things trend with these as we get further out. So questionable, but it definitely looks like that we have a very active stretch ahead once again. But in any case, if anyone has questions before we get off for this afternoon and prepare for the evening, feel free to shoot. I'll give you guys a couple minutes if you do have a question. So also I'll turn the music back on briefly. Also, again, just in case anyone might be living over towards Kansas tonight, you are under moderate risk for severe weather, especially if you're in central Kansas. So make sure that you have a way to get watches and warnings. Could be a pretty dangerous night there. We can anticipate a line of strong to severe storms that could potentially produce up to 80 to 100 mile per hour winds. We'll be going live again later tonight to cover that. So if you want to stay updated on that, just be sure to tune in. Does not look like anyone's got any further questions. So with that being said, hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon. Hope to catch you guys again later this evening for the live stream. David Howard, Dr. Tom Cohen, RFK Jr. Trust me. All right, man. Have a good rest of your afternoon, man. See you guys later.